Most retirees are terrified of running out of money. The data shows the opposite problem. A lot of them die with more than they retired with. That's not a win. It's trips never taken, gifts never given, years lived smaller than the plan ever required, all to protect a pile that was supposed to fund the life. I'm Amy. I look at retirement through the data and I found the risk almost nobody plans for. First, what real retiree spending data actually shows. Then what happened across a century of 30-year retirements. And by the end, a simple test for how much you can spend without feeling reckless. Because the goal was never to die with the biggest balance. Stick around, the test at the end could change how you see every dollar you saved.
Saving is a skill. Spending safely in retirement is a completely different skill. And a lot of good savers never learn the second one. Think about what your whole financial life trained you to do. Build the number, protect the number, never touch the principle. That instinct took 30 years to build, and for 30 years it was exactly right. Then retirement arrives. And nobody ever tells that instinct to switch off. So the account keeps climbing, while the year's healthy enough to enjoy it quietly count down. That's the risk this video is about. Not going broke. Staying in accumulation mode so long that your money outlives the life it was supposed to buy. Accumulation mode is a gift while you're working. It gets expensive the day you retire.
Here's what turns that from a feeling into a fact. EBRI tracked how real retirees behaved across the first 2 decades of retirement. And the pattern wasn't reckless spending. It was the opposite. Retirees who had at least $500,000 going in had drawn down only about 12% of their assets after roughly 20 years. The highest asset group still had more than 89% of what they started with. Even the group with the least kept about 3/4 of theirs. These aren't people who ran out, they're people who guarded the pile long after the pile was supposed to start funding their life. So I ran the harder question myself. Imagine retiring with $1 million in a standard 60/40 portfolio. You take out 4% the first year, then adjust the dollar amount for inflation every year after. Not smooth average returns, the real year-by-year history of stocks and bonds. I ran that for every 30-year retirement that has started since 1928. In 94.2% of those retirements, the money lasted the full 30 years. But the success rate isn't the surprising part. The surprising part is what happened when it lasted. The median retiree didn't limp to the finish near zero. They ended with about $1.5 million. Inflation adjusted on a $1 million start. The plan didn't just survive. In the typical case, the portfolio grew the entire time money was being pulled out of it. That's the trap I want to name. The accumulation trap. Treating I didn't run out as the finish line, when for most retirees running out was never the likely outcome to begin with. Now, this is exactly where finance content gets irresponsible, so let me be careful. None of this means 4% is magic or that you can spend blindly. The fear exists for real reasons. They're just not the reasons most people think. Start with where the 4% rule even comes from. It wasn't optimism, it was built for disaster. William Bengen tested it against every 30-year retirement window going back to 1926, and even the single worst starting year in that whole span survived on about 4.15%. That's the floor, stress tested against the Depression and 1970s stagflation. But here's the blind spot in a floor built on US history. American returns were unusually good. When Wade Powell ran that same 4% rule across 17 different countries and more than a century of data, it would have held up in only a handful of them. In Italy, it failed more than 6 times out of 10. In Japan, the worst case lasted about 3 years. So the caution isn't crazy, it's just usually aimed at the wrong risk. And the real version of that risk has a name, a bad first decade. Same $1 million, same 60/40, same 4% withdrawal, but retire in 2000 instead of 2010. The 2000 retiree took the dot-com crash and 2008 back-to-back and dropped to about $789,000 by 2010. Real damage, but nowhere near broke. The 2010 retiree, identical rules, grew to about $1.84 million by 2020. Same discipline, same portfolio. The only difference was the decade they happened to retire into. That's the thing worth protecting against. Not depletion in the abstract, but a rough opening stretch. Here's the part that ties it together, and it has nothing to do with the market. Retirees with a pension drew down just 4% of their non-housing assets over 18 years. Retirees without one drew down 34%. Same markets, same economy, same returns available to both. Completely different behavior. The pension didn't make them richer, it gave them permission. A guaranteed check covering the basics is what let one group actually spend what they'd saved. That's the real unlock. Not more money, but a floor solid enough that the rest of the portfolio stops feeling like survival money. So, here's how you find your own version of that permission. I call it the permission to spend test. 3 questions. First, what's already guaranteed? Add up the income that arrives no matter what the market does. Social security, any pension, any annuity. The more of your basic life that floor covers, the less your portfolio has to act like survival money. And the more of it becomes what it was always meant to be, spendable. Second, what's your real withdrawal rate? Not the number you fear and not the maximum you could theoretically justify. It's just your annual spending from the portfolio divided by what you have invested. Most anxious savers, when they finally run the number, find they're withdrawing far less than they're allowed to. And it helps to know that real retiree spending naturally drifts downward through your 70s before healthcare nudges it back up in your 80s. The fear is often fighting a problem that partly solves itself. Third, what's your bad decade rule? Not panic forever. One specific temporary move for if the first 5 years look like 2000. Which discretionary things do you pause, travel, gifts, the annual inflation raise? And just as important, when do you turn them back on? A rule you can actually follow beats a vague dread you carry for 30 years and never test.
Most retirement plans are built around a single fear. What if the money runs out before I do? But for careful savers, the real risk usually runs the other way. What if the life runs out before the money does? So before you ask whether your portfolio can survive retirement, run the 3 questions. What income is guaranteed? What rate are you actually withdrawing? And what's your rule for a bad decade? Because the goal was never to die with the highest possible balance. It was to use the money for the life it was supposed to buy. Comment sequence test if you want me to run this same model with a different withdrawal rate, portfolio mix, or retirement start year.